The test data sprawled before me like a mountain range, each spreadsheet a peak demanding my attention. It was tedious work, this meticulous correlation and tabulation, but essential for our team's month-long project on the test vehicle. I was lost in the labyrinth of numbers when my phone buzzed, a text notification breaking the monotony. I initially ignored it, assuming it was just another spam message. But after a moment, curiosity got the better of me. The alert displayed an unknown number with a local area code. Maybe it was a colleague using a new number, I thought. Opening the message, I was met with a shock that jolted me from my data-induced stupor. An explicit image filled my screen, a close-up of a woman's private parts, clearly showing recent activity. The accompanying text read, "Look closely, you still have time, Julian 6 p.m. At first, I laughed it off, dismissing it as a crude attempt at solicitation. But then, a tiny detail in the image froze me in my tracks. A mole, unmistakable, near the woman's private parts. It was Alina's mole, my wife's mole. Doubt and panic surged through me, a tidal wave threatening to drown me. Alina was supposed to be en route to Boston for an important work trip. This image, however, painted a drastically different picture. The clock ticked relentlessly towards 5 p.m., clashing with Alina's scheduled landing in Boston at 4:30 p.m. She usually checked in upon arrival, but maybe she was busy with her team's arrangements. Despite the turmoil raging within me, I decided to respond to the text before taking any drastic action. "Who is this?" I typed, my fingers trembling slightly. "How did you get this image? Am I supposed to meet you at Julien's?" As I prepared to leave for the day, a firm decision took root in my mind. I would go to Julien's, determined to unravel this mystery. Before leaving, I sent a casual text to Alina. "How was your flight? I'm going out for a bite. Call me when you're free." I tried to keep things low-key, buying myself time to gather information discreetly. Walking towards my car, my phone buzzed again. Assuming it was Alina, I checked it, only to find another message from the mystery sender. "I'll be there," it read, "but I'm sure you'll find someone more interesting than me." Dread and urgency coiled in my stomach. I hurried to my car and checked the map. Julian's was 30 minutes away, and it was already 5:40 p.m. I'd arrive shortly after 6 p.m., unsure of the timing's significance, but determined not to miss whoever the tech store wanted me to meet. During the drive, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Alina. "Crazy time with the team," she texted. "I'll call you later before bed. Love you." I pushed thoughts of our conversation aside, focusing on the meeting at Julian's and the enigma surrounding the tech store. Knowing my wife was supposed to arrive in Boston at 6:12, my heart pounded as I parked. The tech store hadn't given any clues about who to look for, so I assumed whoever wanted to meet me would know me and approach me. But the mention of someone more interesting bothered me most. The tech store seemed to possess information I didn't, and I feared walking into a trap. The image of my wife's private parts burned in my mind, leaving me in turmoil. I had trusted her completely, believing our relationship was strong and fulfilling. Now, everything felt uncertain, a fragile house of cards threatening to collapse. The only explanation for someone possessing such an intimate image was deeply troubling, and I was mere minutes away from confronting a reality I dreaded. Stepping into Julian's, I let my eyes adjust to the dimly lit interior. Unfamiliar with the pub's layout, I paused by the entrance, scanning the surroundings. A spacious dining area stretched before me with a bar to my left. Choosing a seat near the end of the bar, I ordered a draft beer, my mind racing as I continued to survey the area. My attention was snagged by a man who had just placed his drink order and was heading towards a table of smiling people. And there, at the table, receiving a drink from the well-dressed man, sat Eleanor, wearing her little black dress and pearls, her smile radiant. I moved mechanically, advancing towards the table where Eleanor sat. As I got closer, her expression shifted from a warm smile to wide-eyed fear. Undeterred, I reached the table and grabbed a handful of the well-dressed man's hair with my left hand, yanking him back forcefully. The man dropped his drinks, stumbling backward with a yelp of pain. I pulled him past and released my grip, intending to strike him with my right hand, but his quick retreat left me out of range, causing him to land on the floor. Taking a step towards him, I recognized Marcus and sternly warned him to stay down. Marcus, disheveled and soaked in drink, obeyed without a word. Turning back to Eleanor, I saw the table had fallen silent. Familiar faces stared back at me, members of Eleanor's team, who had shared meals and gatherings at our home. I mused that team loyalty outweighed betrayal, except for the one who had revealed the truth. Briefly considering identifying the informant, I dismissed the idea as futile. I told Eleanor I was going home, and suggested that if there was any hope for our marriage, she should come with me now. Eleanor nodded, but before she could rise, I gestured for her to wait and requested a moment. I addressed Eva Lawson and Jack Morgan seated nearby. I asked Eva if Lucas thought she was in Boston, and Jack if Claire believed the same. Their avoidance confirmed my suspicions. I pondered whether the whole team was involved, realizing that at least one of them was. The drive home was a blur, ending abruptly in my driveway. Inside, I grabbed a beer and sank into the living room, contemplating my acquaintances. I knew Lucas Lawson and Claire Morgan, but the other couples were strangers. With uncertainty gnawing at me, I considered contacting Jack or Claire but decided against it. Instead of pursuing further investigation myself, I sent a brief message to our friends. Just heard Eleanor's travel plans changed. You might want to touch base on that. I left the choice of what to do next in their hands, feeling a small sense of closure amidst the chaos. Roughly 20 minutes later, I heard the garage door open and Eleanor pull into the driveway. I stayed in the living room, waiting. She walked in, still in her little black dress, but without the provocative heels and jewelry. Calmly, she took a seat opposite me on the sofa. I stayed quiet, knowing the power of silence. I was determined to let it stretch as long as needed. Eleanor broke the silence first. "It's not what you think," she started, but I raised a hand to stop her. "You have no idea what I think," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I don't need an elaborate explanation. We both know there's no real answer to why. It's just a way to justify bad decisions, so let's skip that." "How long?" I asked, my voice flat. "How many times? Do our friends know? Apart from those at the table, who else is involved? Am I known as the betrayed husband among your colleagues and our friends?" "No, Ethan, it's not like that at all," she protested. "Our team's travel plans got disrupted, and instead of coming home only to travel again tomorrow, Marcus suggested we stay in town for a down day before resuming." "Where was the rest of the team? I didn't see everyone there," I pressed, needing more details. "When we got the news, some of the team chose to stay home one more night and meet us at the airport tomorrow," she admitted. "But you chose to lie to me," I pointed out, my voice hardening. "You seemed quite close to Marcus. Is there something going on between the star engineer and the wandering program manager?" "Marcus is all right," she said, trying to deflect. "He even convinced the owners at Julian's not to press charges." I stared at her in disbelief. "I couldn't care less about your colleague. If he hadn't tripped, I would have hit him. Whether charges are pressed or not doesn't matter to me. I've spent a night in jail before, it's no big deal. Besides, it could make for interesting testimony," I added with a half smile. "Do you love him?" Elena paused, clearly gathering her thoughts. The silence stretched on and I could see her thinking hard. "Marcus is not my boyfriend," she finally said. "There's nothing between us. Yes, I should have told you about the change in plans, but it seemed insignificant. Whether I was in town or in Boston, you weren't expecting me, and I was still committed to the team. We were just having dinner before heading to our rooms. There was no reason for you to act the way you did. You humiliated me in front of my team." I unlocked my phone, pulled up the text, and slid it across the coffee table to her. Her face fell as she recognized the image. This time, there was no denying it. "Elena," I said quietly, "our team is very close-knit. Most of us, we have a small group that meets regularly. They were all at Julian's. We were the ones putting in extra effort for the proposal. You know the time I've spent preparing our pitch. I don't know exactly when it began. It was sometime after Marcus became PM. We worked closely together and I was drawn to him. Things just evolved," she explained. Her voice lacked the bravado from before. "No explanations needed," I interrupted. "Falling into bed doesn't just happen. Decisions are made consciously, we both know that, so please don't insult me. So almost 6 months I answered one of my own questions. That's when Marcus joined, right? She nodded. The team, I continued, all of you, I trailed off, not needing to name it. She nodded again. Marcus said it fosters trust in team unity. Is that what convinced all of you to form this group? Now you're being crass. It's more than that. I feel a strong connection to Marcus and my team more than ever, Elena asserted confidently. I sensed trouble brewing. Unfortunately, you may see some changes in your team soon, I warned. What did you do? Elena gasped. Ethan, involving others will only cause more damage. Let them make their own choices. We need to focus on us, she pleaded. Elena, I can't stay silent and be complicit. I care about Jack and Claire. In fact, I like them a lot more than Eva and Lucas right now, I replied. I texted them about the changed plans. How they handle it with their spouses is up to them. I can live with my decision. Ethan, we have the most productive team in CR Inc.'s history, she practically yelled at me. You benefited too. Just because our team meetings were on Wednesdays didn't mean you missed out. I never denied you access to me whenever you needed it. So I slept with my team, big deal. You never noticed that picture you showed me. You want to know about it? She sneered. That was right after Marcus finished inside me. Yes, he came inside your loving wife. What you don't see is Eva. She took the picture just before she went down on me. So now you know you never had seconds or tasted another man's seed. If you don't know, it didn't happen, right? I listened in shock as the extent of the deception and my own ignorance unfolded before me. Now, just because I was aware, just because my fragile ego was bruised, she accused me of wanting to throw away all that her team and she had achieved. Elena hissed, her anger escalating. My heart rate rose as Elena passionately defended her team's questionable dynamic. My own anger was growing by the second. For a fleeting moment during my drive home from Julian's, I entertained the idea that perhaps forgiving Marcus just this once could be possible. However, that notion quickly met its demise. I didn't need to hear any more, and I certainly didn't want to, but Elena persisted. No, sir, we won't let you off the hook. You're going to text Jack and Claire back, informing them that you heard from me and that we were stranded in Atlanta but have reservations for the morning. That's the story. Eva and Lucas will stick to the story, and you're going to back them up, she shouted. There are millions on the line with this deal, and your hurt feelings mean absolutely nothing. Send the text, and then we can discuss our next steps. Discuss our next steps? I retorted. There's nothing to discuss. You're leaving now. You and your twisted team, including your ringleader Marcus, can continue however you like. We're done. I'll be contacting a lawyer this week to start the divorce. It's a straightforward 50-50th split. You keep your retirement and I'll keep mine, I declared. Go on. You have reservations in town. Use them. Head off to Boston and chalk up another victory for you and your team. Ethan, please send those texts, Elena pleaded, her tone softening. If we lose Ava or Lucas before the presentation, the company could lose millions. You and I could miss out on tens, maybe hundreds of thousands in commissions and bonuses. Just think about all the places we could go with that money. Just you and me. Forget about this and reclaim my loyalty. Please, Ethan, don't let some irrational concern about meaningless encounters derail us. Marcus says I'm on the fast track to executive status. All I have to do is keep delivering results for a few more years. Don't you want that for me? For us, she implored. Elena, just leave, I managed to say before I was struck hard in the back, knocking the wind out of me. I fell to the floor, gasping for air with a knee pressing into my back. Don't hurt him, Elena interjected. Too much, she added, almost as an afterthought. Still undecided about breaking my nose, Marcus taunted, leaning in close to my face while I lay pinned on the floor. Elena must have set me up, I thought. Now I know whose side she's really on. We'll see whose nose gets broken, Marcus sneered. Get his phone and type those texts for him. We don't have time for this nonsense. Someone yanked me up from the floor. Just one person. I feigned injury, causing the person behind me to exert extra effort to help me stand. This provided me with vital information. My captor was weak, already wheezing from the effort. I focused on catching my breath and refocusing on the situation. Unlike Marcus and his team of polished salespeople, My team operated in the field with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, SOAR, based in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. My group of engineers, while not as elite, spent time with these crews during test missions. This camaraderie led to us being invited to improve our physical conditioning under the guidance of seasoned soldiers. We designed the equipment needed to access and exit hazardous locations, taking pride in our modifications that contributed to successful missions and the safe return of everyone involved. One man stood out among the 160th, Master Sergeant Daniel Hayes, renowned within his community. Everyone from recruits to high-ranking officers respected him for guiding his men through global missions. Known for never leaving anyone behind, his reputation was solidified during a mission in Colombia. When the FARC ambushed their group, Sergeant Hayes noticed the young LT platoon leader performing well until he saw him on the ground, bleeding from a head wound. The medic declared the LT was dead, but Sergeant Hayes lifted him into a fireman's carry. When the medic reiterated the LT was gone, Sergeant Hayes responded, "That might be true, but he's still coming home with us." Despite the more than 5 kilometers trek through dense forest back to the LZ, they managed to return unscathed, carrying the LT. Upon their return, the medic informed the doctor that the LT had died, but the doctor, using a penlight, confirmed the LT was alive. Sergeant Hayes's actions became legendary. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, everyone listened. He was a relic in an age of convenience and disposability, meticulously crafted and unique, holding a special regard for my team and me. During downtime between missions, Sergeant Hayes taught us basic hand-to-hand defensive techniques. "It's better to know something just in case," he advised. "I understand the biggest threat you're likely to face is a malfunctioning copier or a nasty paper cut. But if you remain in this line of work, you may find yourself in some colorful locations. If you encounter one of the local colorful inhabitants, you'll have something practical to rely on," he explained. "But let's hope a paper cut remains the scariest thing you ever face." I regulated my breathing and allowed myself to appear subdued in my captor's grasp, while recalling the techniques taught by Sergeant Hayes. There might be times when you feel powerless and can only endure the beating. It's unfortunate, but it happens. The key is to remember that even when you're taking a beating, you can still fight back. You just have to outsmart your attacker. I remembered the lesson and subtly resisted, gradually wearing down the lone man's strength. "Give me the phone, Ethan," Marcus demanded, glaring at me. "Now you know I've been with your wife, and that every guy on the team has had their way with her. Forget this tough guy act, Ethan. You're nothing but a weak, submissive nerd. Do as we say, and maybe you'll still have a chance with Elena when the team isn't using her. Don't forget about all the luxuries you can afford with her bonus. That should ease the pain." Marcus's words dripped with mockery. "Maybe Elena will even buy you a Keishan robot for those times when she's busy," he sneered, relishing in my humiliation. I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to lash out as he demanded to know where my phone was. His eyes narrowed, spotting the outline in my shirt pocket. With a swift movement, he reached for it, his right hand outstretched. In a flash, I reacted. Stepping back with my right heel, I struck his shin with a sharp, precise movement. He stumbled back, a grunt of pain escaping his lips. Seizing the opportunity, I flexed my arms, breaking free from his grasp as he yelped and crumpled to the floor. Recognition dawned in Marcus's eyes as I rolled my shoulder, mimicking the technique Master Sergeant Hayes had drilled into me. With a surge of adrenaline, I drove my clenched fist into the center of his face. The sickening crunch of bone echoed through the room as blood gushed from his nose, sending him crashing to the floor. Turning, I saw Lucas lying on the ground, tears streaming down his face, clutching his leg and whimpering about a broken foot. Without hesitation, I brought my foot down on his injured limb, relishing the scream that tore from his throat. "That should clear up any uncertainty," I stated coldly, my voice devoid of emotion. My attention snapped back to Marcus, who was struggling to rise, his hands covering his bloodied face. I approached him, leaning in close to his ear. "Looks like your nose took the punch," I whispered, my voice laced with venom. "Not willing to take one for the team, are you?" Before he could respond, I delivered a powerful blow to his temple, sending him crashing back to the floor, unconscious. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath ragged as I scanned the living room for Elena. Suddenly, a searing pain exploded in my back and neck, sending me crashing to one knee. I whirled around, my vision blurring, to confront my new attacker. Elena stood there, a cast-iron skillet clutched in her hand. Her swing had missed, grazing my side. I scrambled to my feet, snatching the pan from her grasp. "Ethan, we can still salvage this," Elena pleaded, her voice laced with desperation. "Think about the money we would be giving up. I promise I'll end the affairs and cut them off. We can go back to how things were between us." Rubbing the back of my head, I stared at her, stunned by her sudden transformation. She reminded me of the shape-shifting alien from John Carpenter's The Thing, adapting to each new challenge. A smirk played on my lips, and misinterpreting it as agreement, Elena moved to embrace me. I held her back with my left hand, and after a brief moment of consideration, I struck her nose with my right fist. The bone fractured with a sickening crack, but she didn't lose consciousness. Elena cried out, slumping to the floor. "It hurts like hell," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. Her vision blurred, her breathing labored, blood staining her hands. "It works every time," I remarked, my voice devoid of remorse. Elena, through sobs, questioned my motive. "I struck you because I could," I stated simply, unapologetic. I continued recording the scene, convinced that the footage would justify my actions, despite the potential negative portrayal. Master Sergeant Hayes's words echoed in my mind. Decisive action. I surveyed the room. Lucas was writhing in pain, Elena was trying to stem the bleeding from her nose, and the others remained frozen in place. I acknowledged the success of saving someone, crediting Sergeant Hayes for his teachings. Turning back to the aftermath, I sighed, frustrated by the consequences for Marcus and Lucas. I lamented the missed opportunities and potential financial losses. The thought of calling the police crossed my mind, but I decided to delay. I needed more time to question Elena. Kneeling beside Elena, I demonstrated how to staunch the bleeding from her nose. As the adrenaline ebbed away, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. Sitting across from the woman I thought I knew, I couldn't help but question her actions. "Elena, what were you thinking?" I asked, my voice laced with disappointment. "Is becoming a vice president really worth all this?" She admitted regretfully. "It could have been if you had gone along with my plans." "What about the future of our relationship? What about the persistence of deceit?" I pressed, my heart aching. "There's always a possibility, Ethan," Elena acknowledged, her voice devoid of emotion. "Deceit might continue. Marcus warned me about your rigid ethics and idealistic views," she continued. "He said I needed to break free from your influence to achieve success." "When did Marcus give you this advice?" I asked, my voice hardening. "Ethan, you have no idea about my relationship with Marcus," she retorted, her eyes flashing. "Following your suggestions for career enhancement yielded only a few commendations," she explained. "It wasn't until Ava offered guidance that I learned what truly worked for women in the workplace. Engaging in carnal relationships for career advancement was not only effective, but also enjoyable." Still recording the conversation, I struggled to process this information. Curious about the timeline of her actions, I asked, "Did your involvement in these activities begin before Marcus entered the picture?" Elena, impatient, disclosed, "I initiated these actions at the company's Christmas party a year after joining CR. I've been committed to this approach ever since." "Wait, you're sleeping with the boss, too?" I asked incredulously. "Max Donovan?" "Yes, Ethan," she confirmed with a smirk. "Max, Marcus, Lucas, anyone on the team who could help advance my career. It doesn't cost me anything to share some closeness. It's easy to manipulate you men when I can lead you around by your desires, especially you. Show a bit of cleavage, and I could guide you wherever I needed. Even now, thinking you have it all figured out," she continued, a smug smile playing on her lips. "We informed Max of our location when we headed here. Right now, he's gathering the rest of the team, crafting a cover story for our absence. They'll have to make the pitch without us, but the extra effort with their purchasing managers should pay off." Do I really want to hear this? I wondered, but a morbid curiosity compelled me. Oh, what the heck? Why not? I muttered. Extra effort? I prodded. You always were a go-getter, Elena. It was so easy, she laughed. I hate to even call it effort. She recounted her exploits with a chilling detachment. The old joke? The worst sex I ever had was great at the BITS conference. It was straightforward with the men. Brenda, the token woman on the selection board, required some extra effort to win over. It's ironic that I could even seduce a woman, but I had to bring old Marcus into the mix for good measure. She was curious about women, at least temporarily, and that curiosity vanished around the time I started making her promises with my tongue. Once we began working together after securing the contract, we had the selection board under control. Why are we resorting to all this? I asked, my voice trembling with anger and betrayal. If everything is set, why the heavy-handed tactics? That was Marcus's bright idea, she said, rolling her eyes. I told him to back off, that I'd come home, take care of you, and still catch the flight. But no, he had to act like an alpha male, and look where that got us. Now, instead of celebrating our victory, I'm stuck dealing with Max. As I said, it's fixed, but it's going to set me back. You wouldn't have been able to buy me off so easily, Ethan, she remarked, a hint of malice in her voice. Maybe not, Elena replied, her voice laced with a hint of defiance. But I still would have made the flight. Well, you're definitely not making that flight now, I shot back, recalling how Marcus seemed so informed. I suspected Elena had a transmitter. Max, are you listening? I demanded, my voice tight with anger. I'm about to call the cops. I'm certain we're looking at several felonies here, and we haven't even touched on the fraud. This is a federal contract, right? Yeah, she confirmed, her voice strained. The feds don't look kindly on, how did you put it, extra effort. I'm sure you have excellent lawyers, Max, I said, letting the words linger, a hint of menace in my tone. But maybe there's another way. Elena's phone rang, the ringtone blaring hail to the chief. She answered, her voice regaining a semblance of composure. Max, she said. Sure, I'll put you on speaker. Max's voice filled the room, smooth and authoritative. First, let me apologize. Marcus's actions were a gross lapse in judgment. I assure you the board will handle him appropriately. Thanks, Max, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. That's reassuring. It's good to know you on the board take assault and fraud seriously. These are unfortunate allegations, Max continued, his tone carefully neutral. Lawyers will get involved, but nobody wants to rock the boat. We might pay a fine. Marcus and Lucas could get community service. Ultimately, though, you'll end up divorced and half as wealthy. Is there an alternative here, Max? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Elena always said you were the clever one. Yes, Ethan, there's a noir, Max replied, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. We at CR have replaced you in your wife's affections, and when you found out and confronted her, you were treated poorly. Shocking, Ethan. Ethan, Max pressed on, ignoring my interruption. Instead of calling the cops, how about we come to an agreement? I just sent a snap to Elena's phone. One of my tech guys sent it. It should disappear after viewing. Have a look. It might restore some goodwill. Elena opened the snap and showed it to me. I saw a bank account in the Cayman Islands and a very large number. When will that be deposited? I asked, my voice betraying no emotion. It's already there, Max replied smoothly. You'll find an email with the account number. This has been a terrible day for you, Ethan. This decision isn't easy, and I understand the emotion involved. Elena is a very desirable woman, but emotions don't pay the bills, do they? No, they don't, I agreed, mimicking Max's clipped aristocratic tone. CR will cover the cost of your divorce. You can't reconcile. That's clear. Elena will file. She'll take her personal belongings and retirement. I paused, weighing my options. I could stand on principle and expose everything, letting the chips fall where they may. Or I could walk away. Max had given me 5 million reasons to choose the latter. Does CR have a medical team, Max? I asked, my voice betraying nothing of my internal struggle. Yes, we have physicians on retainer, Max replied. Good, I said. Send a few over here in a limo to pick up your team. Are we in agreement? Elena, I said, addressing her directly, Precisely, Max echoed. Are we done, Ethan? Goodbye, Max, I said, ending the call. I pocketed my phone and turned off the recording app. I knew you'd see it our way, Ethan, Elena said, attempting her most charming smile. We can still be friends with benefits once this is over. But even her bright smile couldn't hide her bruised, bloodied face. Her eyes were blackening, and dried blood was crusted around her nose and chin. I found the sight amusing and allowed myself a grin. Misinterpreting my smile, Elena leaned in to kiss me. I raised my hand to stop her, gently pushing her back until she fell onto the couch. His expression turned disdainful as he looked down at Elena. Why would I ever want to kiss you? He asked, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. Hurt and confused, Elena looked up at him, her bruised face reflecting the pain of his words. Take whatever you want by tomorrow, Ethan declared, his voice flat and emotionless. He turned and walked towards the door, pausing beside Lucas, who was still writhing in pain. How's your foot? Ethan asked, his tone mocking. Ignoring Lucas's pained groans, Ethan delivered a swift kick to his groin, sending him curling up in agony. Approaching Marcus, who had managed to sit up, Ethan assured him, Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Marcus's relieved smile vanished as Ethan pressed his foot into Marcus's groin. I wouldn't be so sure, Ethan said, his voice laced with menace. Riveted in pain, Marcus watched as Ethan left the room, leaving a trail of pain and betrayal in his wake. Ethan climbed into his car, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He had no clear destination in mind, but the immediate needs of food and shelter pressed upon him. He stopped at a drive-thru, grabbing a burger before checking into a Red Roof Inn just outside of town near the freeway. Exhaustion overwhelmed him, and he fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. The next morning, he reluctantly dragged himself out of bed at dawn. As he brewed a pot of motel room coffee, his phone buzzed with a text message. Eagerly, he picked it up and read the message from an unfamiliar number. Sorry about yesterday, can we meet at TGIF at the mall? I'll wave you over to the bar. Ryan. I'll be there, Ethan replied, pouring the tepid coffee into a paper cup. Determined to get his affairs in order, he set up his laptop and logged into his online banking. He recalled his economics professor's sage advice from his college days. Keep an offshore account for emergencies. With his professor's assistance, he had set up a bank account in the Cayman Islands, his go-to-hell fund. Over the years, he had diligently saved, amassing close to $50,000. A rare sense of pride washed over him. His fund was about to get a substantial boost. Logging into the secure banking site, he transferred the bulk of the payment into his personal account, leaving $100,000 in the original account. After a quick shower and change of clothes, he headed out to meet the mysterious Ryan. Arriving at TGIF just past noon, he spotted a man waving at him from the bar. The man, around Ethan's age, was well-dressed and had a friendly demeanor. You sent me a text, Ethan stated, taking a seat. Yes, I'm sorry for how things turned out. There wasn't an easy way to break the news to you, the stranger began. Start with who you are and your connection to Elena, Ethan requested, his voice firm. I was part of the team. After 8 years in the Army, I was wounded and medically discharged. I joined CR about 6 months ago and was assigned to Marcus's team 3 months ago. While talking to a friend about the job, I mentioned working for Elena. When he asked for her full name, we realized we had a mutual friend. He asked me to look out for her, Ryan explained. Initially, everything was fine. But about 2 months in, Elena made her move. She's very attractive and persuasive. But when I asked about her ring, she just smiled and said, You were okay with it. I wasn't, and told her so. That's when the trouble started. After rejecting her, I got all the worst assignments and constant grief from Marcus. I called our mutual friend and told him what happened. He said it didn't sound like you to pimp out your wife and that you needed to know. Marcus sent me a photo as an incentive to join the team. Kind of a reward if I went along. I didn't agree with their methods and resigned yesterday. That's when I sent you the text. Our mutual friend, Ethan pressed, his gaze unwavering. Daniel Hayes, Ryan replied, his voice softening. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here. Let's just say he got me out of a tough spot when I was a rookie. I owe him, We both do. What are you going to do now? Max laid it out for me, Ryan continued. I could involve the cops. Sure, Lucas, Marcus, and Elena would face legal trouble, but with Max's lawyers, it would be just a bump in the road. We made a deal. You might think I'm selling out, and maybe I am, but they took something irreplaceable from me. If I can't get justice legally, I'll get it another way. Elena is less irreplaceable than I thought. I've got a trip planned. Tell Daniel thanks for everything. I won't be going back to work. And you, Ethan? Daniel spoke highly of Baxter Inc. Now that you're gone, they might need another engineer. They do things differently there, challenging but without the corruption. The perks won't match Elena's team, but it's honest work, Ryan said. Ethan smiled in agreement. The stranger stood up, and they exchanged a nod before parting ways without another word. Fast forward to Monday. Ethan had just checked in for his flight to Costa Rica. Anticipating the relaxation in Tamarindo, he headed towards security. Spotting a mailbox, he pulled out an envelope addressed to the DOJ in Washington, D.C., containing a thumb drive with the recording. He thought it might intrigue them, considering Max's legal team might not be as unbeatable as they thought. Ethan dropped the envelope in the mailbox and proceeded through security. 9 months later, seated at his usual table in a Costa Rican cafe, Ethan received his beer from Anna. Thanks, dear, he said, raising the bottle. Holding the envelope, he wondered who had found him. Not making much effort to stay hidden, it still would take considerable resources to find him in this small Pacific coast town. His first thought was that Max's people had tracked him down. Letting the envelope sit for 2 days, he felt confident it wasn't a bomb. Still, one can never be too careful. Carlos? Ethan called out to the cafe owner. The necessito season your Ethan, Carlos responded. Ethan handed him the envelope and stepped back a few paces. Better safe than sorry, he thought, as Carlos opened the envelope and handed it back to him. Ethan thanked him, took another sip of beer, and emptied the envelope onto the table. Several sheets of paper fell out. The note on top read, "Thought you'd find this interesting," along with a phone number. Daniel, Ethan thought. Daniel would have the resources to find him. Flipping over another sheet, he found a newspaper article with a picture of Marcus, Lucas, Elena, and Ava being led out of the CR building in handcuffs. The headline read, "Indicted in multi-million-dollar procurement fraud." He smiled. Maybe Max's lawyers aren't as invincible as they think, he mused aloud. A habit he'd picked up since his Spanish was weak and English wasn't widely spoken. He liked hearing English, even if it was just his own voice. "Ana, otra cerveza," he called, holding up his empty bottle. "Sichin, you are grassy," he said as he accepted his beer, took a sip and gazed out at the deep blue Pacific. "Elena, who?" he murmured, a hint of satisfaction in his voice.